Okay. So we will call this meeting of the Dunn County Criminal Justice Collaborating Council to order today on October 13th in the Dunn County Judicial Center. And so Sarah, you want to just run through who we have present online and in person to establish our quorum? Yes.
I don't know who needs to click on that to make that done. Okay. All right. So on the virtual appearance list, we have citizen member Colleen Etzbach. We've got Jonathan Lundeen. We've got Supervisor Kelly McCullough and Jason. Not sure who Jason is. That's
Jason Spence.
okay. Is that you, Jason Spence? Chief Spence?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Very good. Thank you. Jason. All right. And then in the room, we've got Judge Peterson. We've got DOC Field Supervisor Michelle Barrow. We've got Judge Meyer. We've got District Attorney Noda. We've got Victim Witness Coordinator Kraus. We've got Human Services Director Paula Winter. And we have a guest, and on our nomination list for citizen member, JV Gibson Dardane. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Dardane. And we have County Manager Chris Corpola and Chair of the CJCC and myself.
Right. And to give you so much credit for going around the room and doing that, because the older they get, the more you get, the more likely you're to look at someone who's your mother and say, I don't have any idea what her name is.
Yes, Chris Winters.
Yeah,
yes.
Chris Winters. There you go.
There's a lot of that.
When we were sharing the office, they called us Crawler.
Yeah, I can see why.
All right. Okay, approval of the meeting minutes from July 14th. Would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Peterson, a second. Second from Andrea. And any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign, motion carries. All right, next we will move on to, I don't believe we have any public. So consideration of actions to be taken by the council. We're looking to next year already. Looking at confirmation of a recommendation for nomination to the for the 2 citizen member positions on the CJCC for a continuation of Colleen Etzbach from UW Stout Criminal Justice and Rehab Program, and an addition of Jamie Gibson Dardane, who is a Bridge to Hope legal advocate. So I would entertain a motion to approve confirmation of those 2 persons as citizen members.
So move.
Judge Mayer, second.
I will second.
Paula will second. Any discussion about that? Are you prepared to give the campaign speech or?
Oh, no.
Okay. Well, sorry. All right. All those in favor of the selection, confirmation of those 2 citizen members signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you to both of you for your willingness to serve in that capacity. And then we will look for a motion for confirmation of Judge Meyer as the 2023 Vice Chair. That is a 2-year commitment, and then with the intent that it moves into becoming the chair at the conclusion of those 2 years. So can I have a motion to that effect? Judge Peterson, second. Here we go, Michelle. Any discussion about that? Are you prepared for a campaign speech?
So my answer is that if someone else wants to step up, I would be willing to step aside, and then I promise I will not give a campaign speech.
No such luck. You're out of luck. All right, all those in favor of the nomination of Judge Meyer for vice chair, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, and same thank you to you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
It's actually, we've said this, and I don't know if we've said it publicly in this meeting, but it's a pretty easy gig because Sarah makes it, like, she does all the work and you just show up. So it's a very, it's a needed, but Sarah makes it super easy. All right, opioid settlement. Paula, are you going to speak to that? Is that what we're, just an update on where we're at with the opioid settlement group?
I wasn't ready for a campaign speech or an opioid update, but we have been meeting at a couple different times. The sheriff, myself, KT in public health, Sarah, CJCC. Missed anybody? Marshall with the sheriff's department as well. To talk about the county's opioid funding, which will be about 70,000 each year around that for the next 18, 19 years potentially, and what options we have for using that funding. And the first couple of meetings, we're talking about what services or programs are already in place for opioid use, recovery, treatment, etc., and ideas of what we could put in place. And the next meeting has not been set up yet, but we're working on a model that we would be able to prioritize the different ideas that have been brought up and be able to have a ranking system with those priorities to be able to come to a consensus as to what the recommendation would be. Any questions?
How is it that that amount and duration was determined?
Through the lawsuit, that was what was provided in the lawsuit.
So it's the first round of settlement payments that have been finalized. I believe that there are at least 3 like litigants or whatever they would be called, defendants. It's the first round that was finalized, and you could either, as a county, because we had elected in with all of the other counties in Wisconsin to whatever, do all of that legal stuff together. You could either elect to take it in those incremental, in those same, that payment over the 18 years, I believe it's 18 years, or you can opt to take it all in the front end. So I think that still remains an option worth exploring, but in the midst of all of that, we actually received the first payment. So much sooner than we even thought that we would. So the money just showed up, and so we're figuring out what to do with it.
Equally among all the different counties, or is it based on population, or how?
Population, I believe.
I believe population.
Yeah, and I will note that there are 3 broad categories of there's the distributors, the producers. I can't think of what the third one is, but we've only got one of the categories in, and I think two or three of the entities within that category. So there's still quite a bit of question on what's coming next.
And not every county went in on the settlement, Wisconsin as well.
Yeah. So, and it's a settlement, so it's not. It isn't like a grant. It doesn't have any. There's not oversight to it per se. It's, you know, just like if you had a settlement in a car accident or whatever, no one dictates how you can spend it. But the idea is opioid remediation. But that's a relatively broad interpretation of, you know, within the realms of acting ethically. You can, there aren't strict parameters about how it's spent. Any other questions about that? Comments? All right, upcoming trainings, Sarah?
All right, so I want to highlight a couple of trainings that we have scheduled. One is public health is going to have Train the Trainer for Narcan on October 19th at 12 o'clock. So we're going to meet in this room. There's RSVP only, but there's no cost, and public health is going to be providing the training. And then those that are trained can train others on how to administer Narcan, and you'll be able to get a supply of Narcan through the public health. I was told unlimited supply, but I'm not quite sure how unlimited the supply is, but it sounds like ample supply. Are you okay?
No, yes, I was just looking, I had a text from Chief Atkinson, and I just want to make sure he was.
Okay. So this is fantastic. Narcan is a life-saving drug and can reverse opioid overdoses. And we know, and we're continuing to hear, that most drugs are cut with some opioids in them, fentanyl in particular. So that just increases the chance of somebody ingesting more than they intended and having overdose potentially. So it's not just for opioids, it really is for any drug that potentially was cross-contaminated with opioids. So this is just probably the first of more trainings. KT, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I think you summarized that really well. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the next training that I'd like to highlight is stimulant training with Dr. Ralston. So he is the national expert on stimulant use disorder and treatment. He is part of the federal CASA technical assistance team. So he's going out and talking to all sorts of communities about stimulants. So he will be zooming in to this room, or no, we're going to be at the government center, which will have better acoustics and sounds and a bit bigger screen. November 30th, 2:30 to 5:45. It will be recorded, so there is a chance to watch it later. But if, he's done a couple trainings around the area, and they're pretty informative and certainly worth your time to understand the latest science behind stimulant use, why it's so challenging in treatment, and really at this stage of the game, why harm reduction is really getting emphasized more and more. It's about getting people into treatment, engaging them, keeping them there. And the game's changed over the years. So he's going to share all the latest research and tell us what's effective. And that's on November 30th. So any questions on the training? Okay. Please share that information with your staff. I think it's really the Narcan. We need RSVP. We don't need it for Dr. Ralston. I will be putting a flyer together, and I'll send that out to you, but feel free to distribute that widely. We should have plenty of space down in the government center basement. So that's it.
All right. And then would you want to highlight anything you need to out of your staff report?
Yeah, so a couple recent updates. So we did have a substance abuse counselor start in the jail, Shelley Jo Metzger. It started October 3rd. So she is down there beginning to really develop the MAT program, medication assisted treatment in jail, and then bring in some cognitive groups. She'll be able to assess individuals, connect them with treatment while they're incarcerated, but also as they're on their way out into the community, and then do follow-up for the grant. So it's great to have her started, and that's going well so far.
And you've actually had some people have injections.
Yes, yes. We had one in particular, and then there's more scheduled. Part of the challenge was there wasn't a project person in jail, and because of staff shortages, the jail program director is doing correctional officer duties, so there wasn't necessarily as many groups or outreach going on, or somebody to actually do the work of conducting these groups and coordinating out the community. But they were able, they've been trained, and they have a supply of Vivitrol down in the jail. So between the jail program director, Pica, and the jail nurse that's contracted, they've been really able to identify who's at critical need for that prior to release. So we didn't miss anybody getting released from jail that would have been at a high risk for overdose. So But we're hoping to really shore that up and ensure that people while they're in jail can have access to this, because it really does allow the mind to settle and then can really start to take in the cognitive learning that changes that behavior, but it does calm the body. So yeah, that project's moving ahead. And then the other update that I'd like to share is we did submit a tentative pre-application for treatment alternatives and diversion. There was additional $2.9 million that the state is doling out next year. I am pleased to report that we're going to get about $67,000 more next year than we have in the last 5 years due to this extra funding. So this is the couple meetings ago, we talked about the different options that were available and really decided to put it towards additional supports, enhancing the program, and hopefully expanding, getting more people into the program overall. So some of the funds, at the time we were brainstorming, we can use it for housing, we can use it for transportation, some of those support dollars that weren't available with TAD. And we know that the cost of programs, staff, rising costs, and just the rising cost of everything, frankly, the state is acknowledging that, and that's why we're also getting a bigger portion next year to really offset some of those rising costs. So that's the updates on the staff report, unless there's any questions on anything I said or didn't say.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Katie.
So going back to the trainings that you guys are bringing in for Dr. Roston, is that open to community members in addition to staff members, or primarily staff members?
It's designed to be specific for law enforcement criminal justice audience. So it's tailored to that audience versus the general public. But I think if space is available, that would be fine. But I think we want to prioritize our law enforcement. I know Chief Atkinson is sending as many of his officers as he can to this training.
And I was just going to add, it's not really relevant to that discussion, but frequently we're requesting that individuals on bond appearances be placed on a SoberLink device, and it's just been a consistent issue over a number of years that the jail doesn't have enough SoberLinks. So I know they're expensive and there's always a shortage, but it seems to be a recurring problem that it would be nice to have more in the jail.
They rent that, right? Jail does?
I'm not sure what they do.
Yeah, Sheriff isn't here with us today because of another obligation, but I think they do.
I think they rent them, but I also think that if they're similar to the days of early days of electronic monitoring, at least you paid whether they were in use or not. So if you've got them, if you're an inventory of them and they're not off the shelf and out being used, then you're paying a fee for it. So I don't know if that's the key part of the prohibition of having more of them available or what. Worth checking into, or worth keeping our ears open for.
Absolutely.
All right, we will move on to item 9, which is our education component for this month or this quarter. And I will turn things over to Chief Atkinson, who's going to talk to us about the abuse treatment and community collaboration pathways, and then the summit that the group went to, and then our local plan.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Very good. I've had some technical difficulties on my end, unfortunately. So if I lose you, it's not because I just bailed. So to kind of recap what we've been doing the last couple months, I'm going to go back to early August. Really thanks to County Manager Corpola when she was a director for Human Services. She was able to secure funding to send a team to the Chicago Police Treatment and Community Collaboration Conference. And I think it was about 13 of us ended up going there. And several of those people are in the room. I'm virtually out there. But anyway, we attended that meeting and that conference. And the key piece of that conference was to try to work together and work through different kinds of issues or barriers to incorporating pathways to treatment in our various programs. And as it relates to our quick response team was the primary focus. And the quick response team program is about doing at-home interventions with people that we have identified as having a substance use disorder. And that is one of the pathways to getting people to treatment, is doing that community outreach. And during that conference, we learned about other community efforts happening around the United States, some best practices, as well as some legal advice as to how to do that. And I'm real pleased to say we're very close to launching that particular program. And that is one of the pathways that we will be utilizing. Another pathway that we are going to be emphasizing and working towards very shortly is going to be, essentially it's an angel program, the Angels of Red Cedar. That's where it's a self-referral to achieve treatment. So we're working with various partners and shareholders in the community to create safe spaces for someone to come in and ask for help. They can surrender drugs or drug paraphernalia that they may have, and then seek treatment. And those same members that are with our quick response team would then be able to respond and help provide a warm handoff to our main treatment provider, Arbor Place. And then Arbor Place would then do the assessments, and if there's economic support needed, help guide that or help bring the person to Human Services to do economic support. And then those team members, which are made of behavioral health officers, social workers, and paramedics, would help provide these wraparound or check-in type services to make sure that people are able to overcome barriers to treatment. That's one of the other pathways that we're working towards. Another one, which is going to be on the horizon, actually going to be sped up a little bit quicker, and that's going to be thanks to Dunn County Sheriff's Office. Part of their grant for the behavioral health officer was to incorporate officer-led diversion, which is similar to ours, but their timeline is sped up due to the nature of their grant. So our behavioral health officer, Aaron Berg, is working with Dunn County Sheriff's Office, a behavioral health officer, Becca Merrifield, and they're going to be working towards identifying an officer-led diversion. What does that mean? Essentially, if officers encounter people, or deputies, I should put in there, I don't want to just highlight officers, so officers or deputies encounter someone who's committed a violation, could be ordinance, could be criminal statute. If there are certain violations, they may be eligible for diversion. And the diversion could be seeking out treatment. If it's a drug-related type offense, it could be alternative education and evidence-based type education, similar to the one that we are utilizing for our juvenile offenders, which we've had a lot of success with the last 2 years. So that's another potential pathway that is occurring. It's a different one for law enforcement, but I'm very excited that this is something that we're working together on, and I'm very grateful the Sheriff's Office is going to be a partner with this particular program. And these all tie into these federal and, well, really the COSIP grant through the state is also through the federal money that just was allocated through the state. I'm very excited that our federal government has supported this program to deal with persons who have substance use disorders in both stimulants and opioids. And if the sheriff was here today, I think he could speak too, as well as over the last few weeks, we've seized over 700 fentanyl pills. And so for people wondering if fentanyl is in our area, it absolutely is. Methamphetamine, of course, has been there, and opioids and heroin have been there for a while. The issue with those, they don't necessarily present themselves as much as, say, methamphetamine does, where it's more easily identifiable. But it is there. If you take a look at non-fatal overdoses, people that are utilizing needle exchange programs, which, by the way, if anybody ever has any apprehension toward it, don't. Those are great programs and great harm reduction programs that can truly save people's lives, prevent the spread of communicable disease, et cetera. That is another component too that we are working with our Project Hope. So it's essentially what you're seeing here in the county. It's just not going on everywhere. We're an area and an organization or a collaborative organization of really just a handful in our, just like a regional state area, as well as throughout the United States. I believe the last count, there was about 480 jurisdictions in the United States that are creating these pathways to treatment. So when you think about it, just in Wisconsin, there's 570 overall law enforcement agencies between counties and then municipal village law enforcement. So do the math with all 50 states. I'm very proud of this area because I feel like we're really at the leading edge of an initiative that could really save a lot of lives, help families stay together, also while improving the quality of life and reducing crime for our area. It's very exciting. I could talk all day. As you know, I'm long-winded, so I'm gonna stop talking right now. And if anybody has any kind of questions, by all means, I'm happy to talk about it and answer whatever inquiry you may have.
Eric, do you just want to speak for a moment to I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think sometimes we just lose sight of the, or lose track of where things are at. But do you want to just talk about the juvenile side of it, kind of what's happening?
Oh, yes, absolutely. For the juvenile side, we actually started that, and I say we, for the city, had started working on that program about 2 years ago. In fact, the Menominee City Council approved funding in partnership with the school district of Menominee on the second council meeting in March of 2020. And right after that came the pandemic shutdown. So we've been utilizing this for the last 2 years, and you would think that would really have put a damper into what we were doing. However, it is not. I'm very excited at the fact that through the course of the last 2 years, we've seen referrals to human services for juveniles that are committing crimes decreased by 75%. On average, the Menominee Police Department was referring 200 juveniles a year for things that if you were an adult you'd be arrested for it, taken to jail and in the criminal justice system. So we've already seen some positive results in that area, and the students that have been part of our diversion piece of it, and I'll speak to it in a moment, we've seen great success with them being able to complete the diversion program and not coming back and re-offending. So we're hoping that this will translate as well into our adult offenders. It's only been going on for 2 years, so I can't jump up and down yet to say this is ironclad. It's very promising, and I think everybody here should be excited about it. I know I am. So the components of it is a deflection and diversion, much like what we're looking at doing with our adults. The deflection piece is really thanks to a couple of our youth services officers, social workers from human services, and our school counselors at the school district in Menominee area. Every 2 weeks, those individuals will meet and discuss students that they've identified as starting to have behavioral problems or issues that maybe have arisen that don't come to the level of criminal behavior. It's concerning. It may be issues where they're displaying signs of trauma, maybe potentially abuse. All of a sudden they're tired in class when they weren't. It could be any number of things. And then so this team will identify through either their observations or referrals that they receive from other people in the community, a strategy essentially as to how to do an intervention with the kids. And it could be something as simple as just checking and seeing how they're doing, what's happening, checking with their teachers, and then also following up with their parents or guardians. And then once we do that, we determine, are they in need of resources? Is it something from the police? Could they be a drunk, endangered child, or are they facing some sort of abuse? Is it something as simple as that their parents may, I shouldn't say simple, that's a complicated issue, but maybe they have a substance use disorder. Maybe they have some behavioral health issues like mental health disorders that haven't been treated. So then we can get the families proper resources to try to help the children be successful and the family itself to prevent the problem from exacerbating. We've had very good success that we've gotten kids into mentoring programs. We've helped families receive assistance. It could be for food, it could be help with therapy, it could be any number of things. And I thought that maybe we might have more resistance. This is probably being cynical police officer in me. We have not. Most families have been very, very accepting of it. Now, of course, all those professionals are trained in things like motivational interviewing, neuroscience of addiction, trauma-informed decision-making. So they're a special group of people that work together. The diversion piece of it, that's where the student actually commits an offense. And what happens is if we have a student that commits an offense that would be a crime, we'll reapproach the student, and it has to be a certain crime too. It can't be every crime. But depending on the crimes, we will come back to the student within 24 to 48 hours or 72 hours and ask the student if they are interested in having an assessment and potentially diverted. And if they are, we contact mom or dad or the guardian. And if they say they're interested in this, then we do an assessment. It's called a youth assessment screening instrument, YASI for short. It's the same one Human Services utilizes. We wanted to stay in the same lane as Human Services, so we weren't doing something different. That way, everything kind of remains the same. Plus, if we have questions, police being we have our Human Services experts that are there to help guide us. Excuse me. Anyhow, so if all of those things work out, the students have 30 days to complete their diversion assignment. It could be watching an evidence-based video that is intertwined with whatever criminogenic need has been identified through the youth screening instrument. Or it could be maybe just mentoring is an issue. Maybe they need that. Could be treatment. Maybe they've already got a substance use disorder. We'll get that student to whatever it is that they need to help them be more successful. Now, if there are barriers that they encounter, because part of it is an online education, if they don't have access to the internet, we'll help them get access to the internet. We could have them work on it in school. We could help them get to our local library where there's internet services. If the barriers are mom and dad or the guardian, sometimes that's the case, then we'll work with the student. I mean, we're there to try to help the student be successful. And the overwhelming majority of the kids have been successful and haven't come back. We had a couple that were not, but that's just a couple, and that's okay. We figured we're gonna get that. And then we refer them to Human Services, and then they do their work, because they're the experts in that area. So overall, very successful program. School district has been satisfied. I know I'm personally been satisfied. The officers that have been working in it, I think skeptical at first of the programming, just because it is pretty alien to what we normally do. But they're believers. It's turned out to work out well. So I think this will translate well to our adult segment, and especially with our partnership with the sheriff's office on it, since they're going to be implementing similar programs. We've already had adults coming forward asking for help, which, again, the cynical side of me thought, boy, I don't know how well that's going to work. And I mean, I believe that this is effective, but there was still always just a little bit of part of me that worried that we'd really have to dig to get get people to trust us to do this, we're already having people coming forward. So I really couldn't be more excited about it. It's a very exciting time in my career. I wish we were doing this 25 years ago.
Any questions for Chief Atkinson?
I would just add, Chief Deputy Marshal Moltoff was going to present today on what the county's doing. So thank you for covering that, Chief. The Sheriff's Department is going to do very similar things across the county. Even the youth response team will look different in the county with one person outreaching to schools, but she's already starting to work on that and to conceptualize how that will look across the county. So I think it's just fantastic that our law enforcement are really leading the edge on some of these newer programs, and I'm excited too to see the outcomes.
All right, so along the lines of how does this stuff work? How well does this stuff work? Sarah has prepared an annual update from our recidivism project, looking at the efficacy of these, not all of the programs, but many of the programs that we're involved in.
All right. So I did ship out the report late this afternoon, and just when you hit send, and then you're like, oh geez, you see spelling typos. So I know there's a couple typos that I've caught, and based on our conversation, I can also make some adjustments as needed. But this is a kind of an annual event that we've been doing the last 3 years, and really looking at the different collaborative programs and some of the outcomes. This was a project that was started with our data work group led by Katie Shelley and you, Chris, at one point. Really continuation of a lot of effort that the data work group put together in really creating pathways and ways of communicating with each other. So this is one that I'm just going to dive into and hit some of the highlights, and certainly feel free to holler out questions as they come. Don't feel like you need to save it to the end because there's quite a bit of information. So let me see if I can navigate the screen here. And, all right, so new this year is we added family treatment court. We finally have enough time with some of our, with that program, and that we can actually look at recidivism for 1 year. So the kind of parameters of what we looked at, we really looked at the individuals that are in the programs and those that completed the programs. Some of them are called graduates, some are called completers, and so there's kind of different terminology that each of the programs use, but we try to be consistent throughout this document. Of course, there's a lot of benefits that come from all of these programs individually, but when we add them, the impact of them all together, I think it's really pretty fantastic what each of the programs can do. And when I was doing the research for this, you get more, the data geeks, I guess, get excited when you start to see some data start to really line up, but you can really see how we've got different risk groups in these different programs, and the outcomes are equivalent to that as well. So a lot of benefits. I won't go through the list, but certainly impact, reductions in crime, reductions in system costs, not only a criminal justice system, but the human service system, social service system. And then just the impact that it has to individuals, families, and then the community overall, when we can really get at the heart of what is driving the criminal behavior when it's treatment needs. So the first program that we looked at is the pre-charge diversion program. So this is that first-time offender, not a whole lot of experience with the criminal justice system, if any, Could be at different risk levels, because if somebody's younger, they could be at a higher risk level, but this really is for those, that first-time offenders. And the research tells us that those are the ones that will self-correct. And the more that they are brought into the criminal justice system, the more criminogenic it becomes. So looking at the stats here, since the program was started in 2016, we've had 457 program participants that completed, well, didn't complete, but we had 457 participants. 334 of those completed their agreements or graduated from the program. So that's a 73% completion rate for the program. The program's 6 months in length in general, can be longer. There's some videos, really the implications of criminal record, thinking reports. There could be some additional things like community service or other things. But typically it's a low impact program. Of those 286 people let's see, let me go to the next page here. So I'm going to just kind of go off of the bottom line here. So program to date, I just talked about the number of people that completed successfully, the completion rate. Of those that completed, only 22 out of 286 had a new offense. And I'll tell you, most of those new offenses were marijuana charges. They were low-level offenses. There was maybe one or two with significant charges. The rest were very low-level offenses. So 92% success rate, 1 year, no new charges. When we move out to that 3-year time frame, there's lesser people in the pool, but we still have 206 people. Only 31 of them reoffended within that 3-year rate.
And that includes your 22 from the first year, right? Or no?
Yes, yep, yes, yep.
So
They
it's
carry forward.
cumulative.
Yes, yep. And then to the 5-year rate, we only had the 1 year that we can look at that 5-year rate, but 7 of 47 had new offenses. So I think this really demonstrates this is a highly effective program. These are the ones that the less we do, the better. And the research on the recidivism is showing they're not coming back into the criminal justice system. So this really does save the prosecutor's time, the whole office time, and really allows folks to focus on the more significant charges and crimes that are coming in through the district attorney's office. Any questions on the pre-charge diversion or anything that you'd like to add, Andrea, on pre-charge diversion program?
No.
All right, moving on to the next program, the Treatment Opportunity Program. So this really is a program designed for kind of the mid group. So it can be low risk, medium risk, or high risk in TOP program. The program is really administered on an individual basis. It's intensive case management, treatment, follow through, and drug testing, which come with TOP. There has to be a charge or a criminal offense with underlying treatment needs for substance use or alcohol. So here, this program was started back in 2017, and we have had 88 of 149 people complete the program. That's through the end of calendar year 2021. Is all of the dead or the end dates on these. About a 60% completion rate for TOP. And at the recidivism 1 year level, we got about 15% average. So 13 of 85 had new offenses at the 1 year point. When we move to the 3 year, it's a smaller pool. 9 of 27 had reoffending. So this could be a forfeiture that could have been charged as a criminal or a criminal charge. So this one, again, it's kind of caution with that 3 year rate. The pool of individuals is pretty small. When we did some kind of micro analysis to look at who's really getting through TOP, It is by and large the low and medium risk are getting through more successfully. The high risk are the ones that are more inclined to not complete the program or to get additional charges. And as we learned at our executive meeting early this month in the presentation from the treatment court coordinator or treatment opportunity program coordinator, Janae Schlosser, is that people can come in on a DAGP, so a deferred acceptance of a guilty plea, and that is an agreement that is made through the court, and then they have to complete TOP. But we also get participants through Department of Corrections as an alternative to revocation or an evidence-based response to violations. So really just providing more support for that individual and more accountability for that individual as they are struggling. So again, this shows that while not everybody gets to the program, those that do really do have good outcomes, at least on that first year recidivism rate. And we'll be looking at this again next year to see how the 3-year rates are looking.
Before you go forward, Sarah, I was meant this to ask this in the last slide as well. So it says 88, okay, so 149 people have completed the program. 88 of them successfully. Oh, what? So it's not counting people that are currently in the program.
No.
These are just completed.
These are just
either they're out because they weren't successful or they graduated.
Yes. Okay. So terminations or discharges from the program, like negative discharges, can happen quicker than a successful graduation. So some of the numbers, it's easier to get flunk out than it is to graduate. And then there's another point I was going to make. So yes, then people either successfully graduate, they're terminated, or there's just a small amount that are generally discharged. So those are the ones that may pass away. They have a medical condition where they can no longer participate. Very few of those, but those are more, those are also included as far as the total number of participants. All right, any more questions on the TOP program before we cruise along here? All right, we're going up the risk scale here. So this is our treatment court program. So this is really the most intense program we have. It is designed for the high risk, high need population. Dunn County's had a program in operation since 2008. And looking at some of the outcomes here, you can really see just looking at the chart that these are definitely higher risk individuals. A lot less people get through the program. So the average completion rate is about 49%. So again, it's just that failure piece can happen faster than that recovery piece and graduation piece. But of those that have completed the program successfully, looking at the 1-year recidivism rate for convictions, we've got 18%. So only 9 of 49 have had new charges at that 1-year point. When we hit the 3-year point, it jumps up dramatically. We've got 51%. We've got each year laid out, and as you can see, when there's small numbers can have a lot of weight. So again, it just needs to be cautioned that, some years we've got 0% and some years we've got 100%. So the average is 50. But again, this is the higher risk population. For those that we could take a look at the 5-year rate, that is at 39% because only 9 of 23 reoffended. So only 23 people in that group. So again, these are very small numbers, so you've got to just take it with a grain of salt when we're looking at percentages. When we're comparing treatment court to other statistics or comparisons, the national average for completion rate is 59% nationwide. So we do have a lower completion rate. When we're looking at recidivism, DOC has a 1-year recidivism of 31%, and that comes from their annual recidivism report. So, again, that could be all different risk levels. So you've got to kind of read through it a little bit. But at 1-year point, things are looking good. At that 3-year point, with our small numbers, it does appear that it's no better than prison or DOC release rates, but again, those are huge numbers. Ours are small numbers, so I don't think they're really proof that we can compare to easily. Jim, anything that you would like to add, I guess, on the, just for opinion or thoughts on treatment court, recidivism? Or some of the challenges or anything?
You know, I don't, but, you know, the one thing I just like to say is the successes that we have seen, we haven't had our disappointments, but the successes that we have seen have really made it seem worthwhile. And, you know, again, the numbers can be a little bit misleading, but, you know, but there's been a lot of people that have really benefited from the program, and that benefits the community. So, and even if I remember correctly from some of the training that we've had, even, and I think I've seen that, I can say anecdotally not, anyway, people that may be terminated from the program, there's still some harm reduction there, because we've had some people that have been terminated, they come back and they're more successful the next time around. And I think it was, I looked on Tuesday, 5 out of the 7 people are, this is their second time through. And, but I think some of the things we need to work on is growing the number, you know, get our program, try to get it up closer to what our capacity is. That's what, about 20 roughly?
Yes.
And, but it's, but there are challenges, and it is very complicated. So, and we've learned a lot, and we keep trying to learn, but I think the effort is worthwhile. That's my opinion. It's worth it. And I think when I talk to other judges around the state that are, you know, do treatment courts, they say this is one of the more rewarding things that they do, and I agree with that. You know, again, it's very disappointing with some people, but one of the things that we see is if you, someone ultimately ends up going to prison, and we've done we've given them every opportunity to turn their life around, and people really appreciate that opportunity. You know, many of them do, and then if ultimately they end up having to go to prison, at least we've tried to do our best, and I think it's saved resources, and so that's sort of my off-the-cuff remarks today. Any questions? Oh. Anybody else have any questions?
All right, moving along, family treatment court. So our new addition. So this is the one I saw a couple of typos. So oh, actually this got corrected, so that's good. So a family treatment court started in 2019, and that is a grant-funded program. Again, very collaborative and really reaching those that are in need of this intensive program, that wraparound support due to substance abuse and children at risk. So when we take a look at the numbers here, again, these are even smaller than our adult treatment court, but we've had since 2019 through 2021, 6 of 14 individuals successfully complete the program. That's a 43% completion rate. At the 1 year, we've only had 1 of 6 either re-engaged with Child Protective Services or had a new criminal charge related to substance use. Again, we're pretty early on, but that is looking very promising for that 1 year mark. We don't have the data or the time yet to look at the 3-year, 5-year, but those numbers will grow, and we'll do this annually and see how over time the program changes and the outcomes change. So again, some of the comparisons are listed on the report for you to read. Ultimately, it saves dollars. We have some costs cited in there. You know, diversion programs save even more. The higher risk, higher intensity programs, the family treatment court and treatment court, they are intensive for individuals and for staff that participate. So, we do want to strive to reach that capacity or near capacity. So we're really reaching as many people that are in need and could benefit from the program, because we're all already doing the work and meeting and have better outcomes when we're working together. So Judge Meyer, anything that you'd like to add on the family treatment court side?
So the thing I would point out is that if you look on page 9, it talks about 6 graduates of 14 discharges. So to have the family treatment court average completion rate, program rate, those type of things, it is different than the criminal side, because what we should be looking at is if 6 out of 14 people graduated, those 6 people probably would have had their parental rights terminated previously. And so those are, you can look at it 6 out of 14, that's a high failure rate, but really it's not. It is 6 of those people didn't have their parental rights terminated in the past they would have. And so I see it as a huge success rate.
And I would add to that, I think that it'd be helpful for us to reflect the number of kids involved as well.
Yes.
Because there would be, each of those parents probably have more than one child. I mean, they have each, obviously have at least one, but I know several of them have more than one child. So it's reflective of a lot of lives impacted.
And the cost is secondary, but when we talk about costs, when we talk about adoption assistance, thousands of dollars every month. When we talk about subsidized guardianships, for these children to be somewhere, I think cost is way secondary. I mean, let's just be clear about that, because I think kids are more damaged if they are, they are less damaged if they're placed with the parent, hopefully. But if we talk about the cost, these are not minor costs. These are significant costs. And if we compare that to the cost of the program, it pales in comparison.
So I think the same could be said for the adult side as well, just the costs that are averted. And Chris, you had at another meeting really said, right, you got 100 people and 50 get through and don't come back. That's a huge success, So even though 50% doesn't seem, what would be a success, it really is, because these are the most costly, the most challenging individuals and families that we work with across the county.
Right, and if your recidivism rate is 52% from regular treatment court, and it's 51% from prison, well, think about how much money we've saved by not having all those people go to prison.
Yep, and that's cited in here, average cost $35,000 a year per person. Other questions or comments on any of this information? Great. So I will send out an updated version and adjust the date. There was a couple typos that we need to figure out.
Those are nice terms.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, so we are at the end of our agenda. We have a firearm surrender mapping on the 9th of November. If you are involved in that, I would guess you already are aware of that. And the CJCC Executive and Operations Committee will meet in December. And then we'll pass the baton over to Andrea for it to become the chair in 2023 and look at meeting in January, largely with this establishing sort of the new leadership and looking at 2023 goals. Any other comments, questions? Out of the group?
Just want to thank Chris for her service. She's been a wonderful leader and revamped the CJCC and how we hold meetings, and I think it's done some good changes, so thank you for your leadership and your time.
Thank you.
This is our last meeting for 2022.
As a council.
Okay, well,
The
and
larger.
yes, I'll echo that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, I believe that we are done for today.
Thank you, everybody out there. Bye-bye.